Wherever you go these days, people are talking about stress and anxiety. Running can be a great way to de-stress. However, a lot of people will think running, actually that's quite stressful. But if you utilize the techniques I'm going to share in this video, it can help you enjoy your running and get the benefits of being less stressed and less anxious.
A little bit of science, why these tips work. Okay, before we get into the tips, let's go into some simple science. The reason for this is so that you really understand why these tips will work. So in your nervous system, you've got something called the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. Now, the sympathetic nervous system is basically your fight or flight. So from an evolutionary point of view, if you were ever confronted by an animal like a bear or anything like that, then that's what kicked in. All your blood would run to your vital organs so that you could escape the threat. Now, that worked really well, and if you're listening and watching this video, then your genetics or your forebearers' genetics worked well in this department because you're still around, or at least your genetics are. The problem is, in the modern world, we fire off this system, this sympathetic arousal, too often. When something doesn't go right, when an appointment runs late, when we drop our phone down the toilet, all these things cause us to go into sympathetic arousal. So this is why we're so often in a stressed state. Now, from a perspective of running, we do need this state. As I just said, it's part of your fight or flight. So we will be utilizing it in the tips. However, we don't want to be running like we're running from a bear, because you've guessed it, that's very, very stressful. So the second part of this is we'll be introducing what we call the parasympathetic nervous arousal. So what nervous system? So what we'll be doing with that is where you would be more relaxed. So you, from an evolutionary perspective, you would have outrun the bear, got back to your cave, and you would have eaten something. Your body would have relaxed so that you could digest the food, and basically brought your status to a more level playing field. So we'll be using this within our running so that we can find ways to trick our body while we're running to be more relaxed while we run. So we'll be combining both. But it's important just to understand what we are scientifically doing. Now, obviously, what I've just said is a very, very simplistic and short outline, but hopefully it gives you a flavor and a feeling of what we are actually attempting to do with the tips I'm about to give you. Anyway, enough science now. Let's move on to the tips. Tip 1. If running hurts, do something different.
So, what do you do to get your aerobic system up and running? Well, first thing is to run conversationally. So like I'm running, you can hear me breathing, and mainly because I've had a chest thing a couple of months ago, but I can still talk to you. And that's the main thing. So that's firing up your aerobic system without getting your sympathetic nervous system so aroused, like you're being chased by a bear, that you can't run at all. Now, if you can't talk, do this. Runners may not be aware of this. It's called walking. It's legal and you are allowed to do it. And actually, walking is really good for you. Now, my breathing here calms down straight away a lot more. I walk, I would say, about 20 miles a week on top of my running. And I don't put it on Strava, but I've always felt it's a tremendous benefit to me physically. I think it lays a good foundation for recovery, and it also helps with my running and also mental well-being. I don't tend to listen to music or podcasts when I'm running. I do when I walk, and I find it really, really, really beneficial. Now, you can hear my breathing settle down. If this was you, you could do walk and run. So you can run for a certain amount of time. If your breathing gets out of whack, and you couldn't talk, then walk for a while, settle down, start again. Or if you're really not at the stage yet where you can do that, just take a sort of walk, speed up the walk. Really, your breathing is your biggest guide, because that is your system. So, if you were being chased by a bear, your breathing would be all over the place. You wouldn't be able to speak. You might scream a little, nothing else. You would be in complete, fight or flight. We want to get the system kicked in, because if you don't, you'll feel sluggish. If you don't build in that sympathetic nervous system, if you're just in parasympathetic, you will feel sluggish. You will feel not like doing anything. So we want to build it up a bit. So, for example, you generally are going to walk most of the time, then just a very, very short run or speed up the walking will just kick that system in a little bit. Imagine somebody was faster at you or better move a bit quicker. That will kick it in for you. And then you can start, not making sure that it goes too far and that you go into full kind of sympathetic nervous arousal, i.e. fight or flight. You don't want to do that. So that's the first stage.
Tip 2, trick your body into running relaxation.
So, how do you get into parasympathetic nervous system? So, you started your run, you woken up sympathetic nervous system, but how did you then get even more relaxed and relax your body? Well, I'll just go, right? One of the ways you do that is a bit odd, but it does work, and that is to soften your eyes. Now, when you're in fight or flight, so imagine that you're confronted by a bear. I love bears for some reason. You wouldn't be focusing over there. You'd be focusing on that bear, because you would not want to take your eyes off that. When the opposite is that when you're relaxed, you can utilize your peripheral vision. So if I'm looking at you now, I can see my hand to my right. And I call that softening our eyes. Now, for safety purposes, when you're running, that doesn't mean you're looking to the side. It means that you soften your focus, so you're aware of your peripheral vision. This will start to kick in parasympathetic nervous system. Also, just be aware of tension in your body. So, I hold a lot of tension in my jaw. So sometimes when I'm running, I just loosen it. A lot of people hold a lot of tension in their arms. So sometimes drop them for us 2 seconds, shake them out, walk and run, like I said earlier, just to kind of really kick in that parasympathetic nervous system.
Tip 3, mindfulness, what it actually means to runners.
The next thing is mindfulness. Now, mindfulness gets a lot of press, and I always think that the term mindfulness, mindful, the whole point is, while you're running, it's not to try and empty your mind. Your mind is full of stuff already. The thing is to just let those thoughts go by. So they're like trains that come by and you don't jump on them, you just observe. One of the ways I do it is a bit odd, and it helps with the breathing as well, because the breathing is the other key factor that I've mentioned. And the way I do that is by counting aloud when I run. So, for instance, if I'm running, I'll be going 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. And I just keep doing that. And of course, it's great when you go past people, because people think you're mad. But you've got to remember, most people are just sitting there staring at their phones. You could be walking down the high street, stark naked, and no one would really care. So what it does, one, it keeps your breathing honest because you're speaking. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. If I go too fast, I won't be able to count. Secondly, you're not thinking about anything else. Living well counted. So that helps. Try it. You might get arrested. You might not, when I was running out of places to run. But what you will find is that it's a distraction. But It's a good way of kind of a running meditation. No such thing, I guess, but in a way, that's a good way of utilizing that. And it also controls your breathing. They're two key main factors. But mindfulness is really observation. We live in a world, we don't observe, we interact, we dive into our thoughts all the time. We're always in our thoughts. And by utilizing running with mindfulness, you can observe your thoughts. And if you get really into this running malarkey, after a long period of time, your brain kind of gets fed up of feeding you all this rubbish and more or less stops as best as it can. And that's when it really is something quite unique and beautiful. But in the initial stages, your brain is always crying for attention. Me, look at me, look at me, I'm doing a trick. Look at me, Lee. I'm doing something. Look at me. It's like those kids when they were smaller. Look, I'm standing on my head. And you've just got to kind of go, yeah, I can see you standing on your head. And then move on. Don't interact with the thought. And counting's, silly as it sounds, it works. Oh, stepping over loads of puddles here. So, they're my tips for utilising your kind of parasympathetic nerve.
Tip 4, using distractions in your running.
Do you use distractions when you're running? You know, because distractions, double-edged sword, really. They can work for you or against you. So, like for me, when I run, I like to be with my thoughts. As I said earlier, in the mindfulness part, I like to observe those thoughts. I don't like to resist them or push them away, but I'm not making that a rule. Some people, they'd never get out for a walk or a run, and I've been there without some sort of distraction. And in those situations, you're better off having some sort of distraction. So some music or a podcast. When I walk, I always do. I say nearly always. Do you run with other people? Again, I love solitude of running. I love it so much. I'm a bit of an antisocial bugger, really. But when you run with someone else, there's a connection. And also, you're chatting. So you're probably not running too hard. So there's that side of it. So it's really testing it out and see what works for you. There's no rule, just awareness. Awareness of, what works for you. If you're running and I see people and they're running and I go past in the morning and they go, now, if you're competing, I guess that's okay. I know running can be hard, but for the sake of this video, that's not what we're looking at. Getting to that stage, do something different. Walk a bit, have a distraction, or, find your breathing again. Become aware of your thoughts. What's making you? So maybe stop engaging with those thoughts. Come into the moment. Because as human beings, we're always mentally traveling. I believe stress is past-based. We're thinking about what we were doing or did do. And most anxiety is future-based, in front of us. So the moment you can draw yourself back to now, to this moment, like here, not yesterday, not 20 minutes ago, not what's going to happen tomorrow at work, here, that's when you will be at your most ease, most content, and most creative in many cases. So, anyway, I'm going to get on with my run. It is absolutely stunning today. Don't you think? Great place to be alive, wherever you are. If it's to be, it's up to me.
So that's it for this video. Hope you really enjoyed it and got some useful benefits for using running to actually reduce stress in your life. And if you've enjoyed the video, why not give it a like or subscribe to the channel. See you really soon. Bye for now.